All right. All right, folks. Welcome to the Dirty South podcast show. I'm Hank Sewell. And with my co-host.
Erik Drew, covering the Carolina Panthers.
So we're here. Week one of the NFL is finally here. It was a first full weekend of football. Erik, what was your initial reaction to week one?
Surprised. I was surprised at the outcome, how close certain games were, and how other games were not very close.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed, and I'll tell you why. But first, a quick message from our sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to pretty much anything: sports, concerts, theater, comedy, maybe even an NBA playoff game. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like being there in person, and SeatGeek will get you close to the action for a great value. I have SeatGeek on my phone. I just used it last weekend to get into the Bears-Falcons game. For me, my dad, and my brother, it was easy. They rate the tickets based on value. You can be anywhere. Like I found tickets in Chicago. I'm from Atlanta. And I've used multiple tickets to find, I've used the app multiple times to find multiple different tickets, and it's a great app. Best of all, our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code RECOGNIZE, RECOGNIZE today. That's promo code RECOGNIZE for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. That way you get $20 off that game that you're trying to get into this weekend. Yeah, like I said, last night I went to the Atlanta United game. I got to see the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the first time, and man, it's gonna be a raucous crowd there on Sunday night for the Falcons versus Packers.
Oh, yeah. That's probably the best game of the week.
Yeah, no, and the last year when they played each other, when they played in the playoffs, I was scared to death of the Packers. I thought that they were going to come in with this Aaron Rodgers buzzsaw and just absolutely rip them apart. And the Falcons played a whole new brand of football that I hadn't seen in my Atlanta experience in over like 20 years. So that was fun. But yeah, that Mercedes-Benz Stadium is going to be quite an experience. We'll get back to week one. You said you were surprised. Why were you surprised?
Well, I was surprised. We'll start in the NFC South. I was surprised by the Falcons-Bears game, how close it was.
Yeah, that's why I'm disappointed.
I can understand that. I mean, you were there in person. Were you sweating it out a little bit?
I think if any other quarterback in the NFL not named Mike Glennon was leading the Bears on that final drive, we'd lose that game, or the Falcons lose that game. Penalties were just horrendous. They played cushion defense all the way down the field. I don't know if you were watching it, but the defensive backs didn't press coverage at all, and they just kept throwing slant, slant, slant. You get 6 yards a pop, you're going to get down the field, and they never made any adjustments. But if you've watched the Falcons in recent history, their last 3 or 4 years, they always do this. They always play bad weeks 1 through 4. Like last year, I texted my friend after week 2, we need to fire Dan Quinn. I said that. We need to fire Dan Quinn after week 2 last year. That's my friend screenshots it and sends it to me every time that the Falcons win, because that was definitely my biggest overreaction ever. So I'm not going to hop on the overreaction boat just yet, because I want to see how the Falcons do in weeks 5 and 6. That's when I really decide whether or not, where our season's going. Because I think everybody played bad in week 1. There was not a good-looking team in week 1 this year.
Oh, there were some good-looking teams, just not in the NFC South.
Yeah, not in the NFC South. That's okay. Better assumption. Yeah, so I was at the Bears game, and then I had to travel back. Our flight got canceled out of Chicago, so I had to drive from Chicago to Atlanta overnight. So I didn't get to watch any other NFL action. So you might be the better eye for that Panthers-49ers game. I was following it on Twitter. I saw that a couple Cam Newton passes he wasn't looking so hot.
I tell you, it was expected. Cam Newton threw 2 passes the entire preseason. Obviously, he had his offseason surgery on his partially torn rotator cuff in his shoulder. So, I mean, he was expected to be rusty, but rusty is a little bit of an understatement. I mean, Cam missed a wide-open Ed Dixon in the end zone, a pass that you and I could have thrown. I mean, there was no one within 10 yards of Ed Dixon, and he just overthrew him. But, I mean, he sort of got it together in the second half. I mean, the Panthers' offense was a little bit up and down. I mean, the 49ers defense is a little bit underrated, I will tell you. Their run defense is, I mean, look at how many first-round picks they have in their defensive line alone. Yeah. They have Solomon Thomas, Armstead, and Buckner as well. But I'll tell you, it was the most interesting thing for me was how offensive coordinator Mike Shula used Christian McCaffrey. All offseason long, I've been talking about he's got a million different ways to use him. And you saw McCaffrey, he lined up in the wildcat, he lined up in the slot, he was catching balls out of the backfield, he was carrying the football. It was incredible, and that's definitely a storyline to follow all season long.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. What did you think of the debut of Christian McCaffrey? Do you see it only going up from here?
Yeah, I think it only goes up from here. Like I said, the 49ers front seven is extremely underrated. McCaffrey probably didn't get as many yards as he wanted to, but just the many different ways they lined him up and used him just shows you all the potential he has, and they're going to utilize him going forward. I mean, the offense eventually will revolve around Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, no, and I see that's kind of why they picked him. You don't want to overload the rookie immediately and risk an injury, especially when you've got guys like Cam Newton and Greg Olsen that they can lean on until McCaffrey is ready to carry the offense. And I think from what I saw on Twitter and videos after the game, it looked like McCaffrey handled being a rookie running back pretty well.
Yeah, he did. And he has help, too. Jonathan Stewart's still there. He's still the battering ram.
He's not the workhorse. He doesn't have to be the workhorse in Carolina.
No, he doesn't. But going forward, they're going to want to see Cam Newton get in his rhythm, and they're going to want to get Greg Olsen going. I mean, he didn't do very much last Sunday.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, so – and I guess the next we'll move on to the Saints-Vikings games, that Monday night game. The biggest takeaway I got from that was what happened to offensive genius Sean Payton.
I agree. I mean, the Saints' offense wasn't really clicking at all.
The defense. I mean, look, Sam Bradford lit them up, but the defense. It looked like an actual defense for the first time in New Orleans in 7 years. They haven't had a defense in 7 years. That defense looked sustainable, and the offense gets in the red zone 4 times, doesn't even put up a touchdown. How does that compute for the Saints defense or offense?
Well, it was kind of opposite what you would expect. I mean, we expected the defense to get lit up. They did. But like you said, they resembled an NFL defense for once. But we kind of expected the offense to still be able to score a decent amount of points. Even though the Vikings have a good defense, you still expected Drew Brees to light it up through the air, the rushing attack, the three-headed monster. Mm-hmm. What happened to Adrian Peterson lighting it up against his former team?
Yeah, and, it had to sting a little bit watching – Dalvin Cook light up his rookie Vikings record while he was on the sidelines. And I don't think that was a scuffle. I think obviously ESPN blew up that little sideline altercation with Sean Payton and Adrian Peterson. I don't think that was anything worth covering. That was just two competitive dudes being competitive. But they didn't use Adrian Peterson like Adrian Peterson's ever been used in his career. He's one of those guys where you rush – and that's why it never made sense for him to go to New Orleans. When he went to New Orleans, I said that it had Steven Jackson written all over him. When the Falcons signed Steven Jackson a couple years ago. Because in a passing offense, you don't turn around and hand the ball off 20 times. And Adrian Peterson needs to carry the ball 20 times to do what Adrian Peterson usually does. He wears defenses down. He doesn't just come in for 3 carries and explode for 70 yards on each of those. That's not what he does.
Yeah, I mean, the carries were split pretty evenly, but I think Alvin Kamara, the rookie from Tennessee, I think he came away with the most carries out of the 3 of them. Yeah,
and you called that. You said that he was one of your fantasy sleepers last week, so I think that that's something moving forward that they're going to keep using him. I also don't understand why they didn't hand the ball like that goal line. I can't remember if it was in the 3rd quarter or the beginning of the 4th quarter where they did a play action, and Adrian Peterson looked like he had the entire end zone to himself if he had taken the handoff. And then they dumped it out in the flats for an incomplete pass. I don't know. I just don't see this Adrian Peterson thing working out in New Orleans.
Well, it was week 1, so maybe.
Yeah, no, overreactions. Yeah, the overreaction. So who do you think looked the best and who do you think looked the worst out of the NFC South?
Out of the 3 teams?
Yeah.
I would say the Panthers looked the best. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue. Their defense, for sure, more specifically. Their defense looked like they were on fire. They looked like the Carolina defense of 2 years ago.
And that's
I mean, that secondary is a year wiser. Like I said, James Bradbury and Darrell Worley on the 2 outside corner spots. They're coming into their second years, and they looked like they had it pretty much all together. I mean, they have one of the best front sevens in the NFL, in my opinion, in Carolina.
And that's what kind of surprised me was that I thought the Falcons I'm going to say the Falcons looked the worst because we expected the Saints to look about what they did on Monday night. You did not expect the Falcons to look as mild. They looked mild against the Bears. They did not look like the same contender team. So I'm going to say they played the worst. And I think that's just because the pass defense wasn't great. Penalties were awful. And that's not a Dan Quinn thing. Usually Dan Quinn coaches pretty disciplined football. So the penalties were concerning. But Robert Alford also, he kind of built his career on, I'm going to pass. He pass interferes every play, and he dares the referee to call it every play. So it's one of those things where he's going to get caught, and it's going to happen.
But now I have a question. Is there something in the air in Chicago for the Falcons?
Yeah.
Because wasn't that their first win in Chicago since 1983?
It was. I don't know. Maybe. That Soldier Field's a sweet stadium. I did not expect Soldier Field to be as loud and as raucous as it was because I knew that the Bears weren't going to be very good. I mean, we had some Bears fans sitting next to us saying, "Oh, we're on to the Super Bowl now. We can compete with the Falcons." And I held my tongue because I was in enemy territory and I didn't respond to any of them. So that was the Chicago Week 1 overreaction, is that the Bears are Super Bowl bound. I don't know. I don't know what it was. The run game never really got going in Chicago for Atlanta. Every now and then they'd kind of dice and slice, and it would be okay. And then it just I don't know, just drives just died before you could even realize what was happening. I haven't watched the replay quite yet. I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and watch it, but I plan on watching it again tonight. I don't know. I'm mildly concerned about the play calling because it wasn't. The offense looked the same, but the play calling didn't look the same from Sarkisian to Shanahan.
Yeah, I think that's a huge factor. Personally, I didn't think it would be that big of a change for Matt Ryan, but watching that game, I mean, that did not look like the same offense we saw last year.
No, it didn't. But like I said earlier in the show, Atlanta does this. They kind of sit around, they fumble, they don't play very well weeks 1 through 3. I don't know what it is about weeks 1 through 3 for Atlanta, but maybe it takes a close win or a close loss for the team to come together and do that whole brotherhood thing that they preach. But it has me concerned for this week. It has me very, very concerned because the Packers' front seven looked like world beaters. But then again, Seattle's offensive line is awful. They've never had a good offensive line in front of Russell Wilson. That's part of the reason why Marshawn Lynch retired, because he knew that the Seattle doesn't care about their offensive line. They're pretty open. They're pretty open about, we don't care about offensive line, which is nuts.
Well, that was another surprise for me. Week 1 is how good the Green Bay defense played. And
the offense didn't look that great, but the defense looked very good, and that concerns me, especially with this play calling that you talked about. The Falcons need that same play calling to beat the Packers.
They need to be able to – they only had 64 rushing yards as a team, Atlanta, last Sunday. And so they need to run the football to open it up for Matt Ryan. And Julio Jones needs to get going. I mean, what did he have? 4 catches for
66 yards? 66 or something like that. And Muhammad
that's not terrible, but that's not the Julio Jones you know and love.
Right, and that's because Julio works well in the misdirections. When you can hand the ball off 10, 15 times to each of the running backs, and they can set up the play action with the misdirections, that's when Atlanta gets you. Like that play action, I think it was play action to Austin Hooper, that long touchdown pass. It's that misdirection, routes got blown up or coverage got blown up, and the routes crossed each other, and Austin Hooper found himself wide open, basically catching a punt from Matt Ryan at midfield and then running it into the house for like an 80-yard touchdown. But that's the kind of stuff that the play calling needs to fix.
For sure.
So let's move on to this week's games. So we've already talked about the Falcons and the Packers. The Panthers have who again?
The Panthers' home opener is against the Buffalo Bills.
Bills Mafia traveling down to Charlotte. How do you think the Bills Mafia is going to handle Charlotte this week?
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of Bills fans here. I mean, there's a Buffalo sports bar in uptown Charlotte that I have been to, not because I'm a Buffalo fan, but I know someone that is, and he brought me there. And it's crazy. There will be a lot of Bills fans in town. They seem to – they're everywhere. And you gotta give it to them. Their team sucks. It sucked for over a decade, but
they're the most
passionate fans.
Yeah, they're the most faithful fans in football, no doubt. And that line, I'm looking at the lines right now on my app. That line is minus 7.5. Minus 7. It opened at minus 7.5. It's now down to 7.
Okay.
Man, that's a big spread. I mean, Buffalo is a competitive team. I would think, right? Don't you think that they're a competitive team?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're borderline I don't want to say tanking, but borderline kind of throwing this season away, waiting for either Sam Darnold or
Yeah,
Josh Rosen,
no doubt.
just like the New York Jets. But at the same time, they still have talent on their team. On their offense alone, I mean, you have LaShawn McCoy, one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah, and he's
You
one of those.
have Zay Jones. There's a couple hidden storylines, too, with this Bills offense coming to Charlotte that is very intriguing.
Like,
You have Zay
what are some
Jones,
hidden
went to
storylines?
East Carolina.
Okay.
He's coming back here. You have Mike Tolbert, their battering ram. He was a Panther for 5 years.
Yep.
So he'll be back in Charlotte. But,
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
mean, they
And so
have
there's just
talent on
people,
their offense.
and there's just people on that Bills roster that has something to prove. That's kind of the way I think Buffalo fans would like their Bills to be, with something to prove. And LaShawn McCoy, he is, for as much as he can disappear in an offense on a Sunday, he can also spoil a Sunday for you. He can go off for like 200 yards, no, or not 200 yards. He can go off like 120 yards in the flash of an eye, and this will be a good test to see how well Carolina takes care of business against the bad teams of the NFL. The Bills are more competitive than most bad teams because they have some superstars, like we mentioned. I want to see the run. I want to see the linebackers flying around. I want to see them making sure that LaShawn McCoy doesn't beat them.
Well, I expect to see the Carolina defense just how we saw him last Sunday, and that is dialed in and ready to go. That defense performed last Sunday.
Yeah,
And, I mean, Buffalo, their offense revolves around LaShawn McCoy. If he doesn't get going, then basically you have Jordan Matthews and Zay Jones to cover for the most part. And Tyrod Taylor's a talented quarterback, but I don't think he's that talented to really light you up through the air when they have no threat of the run at all.
yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's one of those take care of business. I don't know if they cover the -7 because that's a big spread in the NFL. Like we saw last week, the Falcons was -6.5, and we thought that was a cakewalk. But of course, Vegas knows all, and the Falcons only win by 6. I'm not going
We
to
did
take.
go 2-1 though. We went 2-1 in our spread picks last
Yeah, we
week.
did. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Buffalo covers. I'm going to say they cover the 7 points.
I'm gonna take Carolina on the over.
Okay, all right. You got them covering, and then next we've got New England at New Orleans. It's crazy that both teams are 0-1 in this game. Most people would have expected the Patriots to come in 1-0. The line opened at -4.5. It has extended all the way to 6, which means people saw the opening line and just hammered New England -4.5. I kind of wish I had hammered that because that seems like an easy bet.
Yeah, I don't expect the Patriots to be 0-2. As much as the Saints offense could come out of nowhere and surprise us, especially against that Patriots defense, if the same defense shows up this week that showed up Thursday night, then look out. This game's wide open. But
Yeah,
at the
I mean,
same time, do you really expect, with all the talent they added this offseason, the Pats to go 0-2?
yeah, no. And the thing about it is, you've got to get concerned if that same defense shows up because if Alex Smith can light you up downfield, Drew Brees will set new passing records against you. So you better be ready for Drew Brees to air it out. And the over 56 points. This is a game. I think this is the highest over under. Yeah, 56 is the highest over under points this week in the NFL. So this is supposed to be the highest scoring game. I almost want to take that over 56 because New Orleans is not going to stop New England, and you don't know if New England is going to stop New Orleans if that same defense shows up.
Yeah, that could be an offensive showdown.
It could,
but it also could be a blowout on one side. I mean,
yeah, no,
if New England's defense suddenly shows up like we thought they would last Thursday, New Orleans could be putting up no more than 13 points.
If the game were in New England, I'd be more concerned for the Saints. But because it's in New Orleans, where the Saints defense can feel more comfortable, the Saints have that. There's something in the air in the Superdome where the Saints just, obviously play better. It's every time the Falcons go there, I just get the most nervous, no matter how bad the Saints actually are. So I'm going to take New England to cover the -6, but I'm going to go over 56 points because I think this comes down to a touchdown at the end of the game.
I would agree. I'd take New England with the over 6, and then I don't know about the over under.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess I would take the over. I mean, it's going to be an offensive showdown, but
that's a big over for an NFL game.
that's like a college football over.
I was about to say that's like 56 is like a regular college football over. So it's kind of odd to see that. It's not odd because both defenses have been suspect so far. Next, we've got Chicago and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has yet to play yet because their Week 1 game got canceled. The line opened at -5.5, but it's extended like the New Orleans-New England game, 1.5 to -7. So the public is hammering Bucks. The Bucks to cover -7 or -5.5. So the line's moved to -7. What do you think? I think the Bears are going to be one of those teams that just like they ruin spreads. I think they cover all year. It's going to be one of those teams.
Oh, I think the Bears will cover. I think the Bucks will win the game, but the Bears will cover.
Yeah, and I think it was last year the Bears and the Bucks played a crazy game in like Week 10. It almost like went to overtime or something like that. I can't remember what happened, but I just remember a crazy game between the Bucks and the Bears last year in Tampa Bay. And the Bears are sneaky. They got that Cohen guy,
Tariq Cohen there.
He diced Atlanta up. I mean, that was the most concerning thing. Every time that 29 kid touched the ball, he was taking it 10, 20 yards at a time, and it was concerning. So I think the Bucs are going to have their hands full with that running back. Jordan Howard seems to be dinged up a little bit. On my fantasy app, they said he was questionable. He'll play. I mean, there's no reason he shouldn't play. I think the Bears, if Mike Glennon, and plus is the revenge game for Mike Glennon.
Oh, yeah, totally forgot about that. Yeah, back in Tampa, Mike Glennon.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where he has something to prove. I think he covers the spread. I think that's what he has to prove.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Tampa wins, but no more than 4 points, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think I would even go as far to say 2 or 3 points. I think this is really a game that comes down to the wire. Then finally, we have the Sunday night game. We've talked about it, Falcons and Packers, game of the week. Oh, man, I can't. See, I didn't get to – all preseason, I never watch preseason games because I feel like I'm cheating myself because I'm, like, watching football. I want to hear the Reds – I want to see Red Zone on TV. I want to see Sunday Night Football. I want to see Monday Night Football. I want to hear Al Michaels. I want to hear John Gruden. And last Sunday, I didn't get to do that because I was traveling. And then the bar in Athens that I work at, the power was out, so we didn't get the Monday Night Football broadcast. I can't wait to hear Al Michaels' sweet whispers in my ear while I'm watching the Falcons this Sunday. So I'm excited about this game.
This is hands down. I know Fox always uses that America's Game of the Week slogan, but this is hands down the game of the week. I don't see a better game on the schedule.
Tennessee-Jacksonville could be exciting. That's not a traditionally good matchup, though. That's usually like the throwaway Thursday game. Philadelphia at KC could be good. But other than that, Seattle, San Francisco is not the same. Yeah, I think this is a game. Yeah, this is the game of the week. So I'm nervous. I don't know what to expect out of Atlanta because they played so bad week 1. The line opened at -2. It's moved up to -3. This is the second highest over behind New England and New Orleans. It's at 54 points total. The public money is on Green Bay right now. 58% of the public is betting on Green Bay to cover -3. That defense looks so good.
I'll tell you what. I've been going back and forth all week with who I think is going to win this game. I think the Falcons could surprise everyone and show out. It's their first game in their new stadium, right?
Yep, and they're opening the roof.
That might be a little bit of a factor in it. They want to play well in front of their fans, especially after a win that almost felt like a loss last week because they played so underwhelming. But at the same time, you have the Green Bay Packers. That NFC Championship game was not too long ago, so that's still fresh in their minds.
No, absolutely. And they got kind of embarrassed in that game. Like they
did. Yeah, that game was not very competitive.
No, it was not. And there's a lot of Green Bay faithful that travel to Atlanta. Every time Green Bay's in Atlanta, there's a lot of cheeseheads in the stands. So it's one of those things where I think there's a special energy at Mercedes-Benz because this is finally where Atlanta feels like there can be a big market city. The Dome was great, but it never felt like it was something special. Mercedes-Benz is supposed to be something special for Atlanta, and I think the fans are going to get behind it. I think there's going to be a special energy in the stadium that night, especially if the roof's open. I'd almost prefer the roof closed for the noise.
As long as it's real noise, not artificial.
Oh, okay. All right. Now there we go. Yeah, and then, but the thing about it is, as good as Green Bay's defensive line looked, Atlanta's offensive line is tenfold better than Seattle's.
Well, that's not very hard.
Yeah, I mean, but so that's just that canceling factor. I think, and maybe Atlanta played bad because they weren't showing all their cards against Chicago. That could be something too.
I'm not really one to bet against the bad man that is Aaron Rodgers, but I think I'm slightly leaning towards taking Atlanta on the over in this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they definitely cover the 3 points. I don't think. Okay, let me rephrase that. I don't think they definitely cover the 3 points. I hope that they cover the 3 points. And ooh, yeah, I'm taking Atlanta. It's just going to depend on the play calling, and it's going to depend on can they force Aaron Rodgers into a turnover, because he also doesn't look good weeks 1 through 6 most years. Like most of the time, Green Bay fans they're not calling for his head, but he has the famous RELAX, relax, stuff like that. So he's not necessarily one to shine out in weeks 1, 2, and 3. We'll see. I'm concerned. I think this will be the closest game all day.
This is my least confident pick of the entire schedule for week 2.
Yep.
I'm going to give it to Atlanta, their first game in their new stadium, but it would not shock me in the littlest bit if Green Bay comes out of here with a win.
Yeah, no, I mean, and honestly, a loss for Atlanta might, in week 2, might be long-term better because it builds that whole brotherhood thing that they preach so much in Atlanta. And I think it would kind of help the team. I don't know. Losses are never good, and you obviously want to win every week, but a loss to Green Bay in week 2 isn't the worst thing in the world, especially since you're going to see them again, hopefully, in the playoffs.
Oh, these two will meet up again in the postseason. Yeah. Actually, then again, who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
Green Bay will be there. I think Atlanta will definitely be there. But at
NFC South,
this division's wide open.
Yeah, no, the NFC South is wide open. I think more so than just about any other conference.
I think the NFC in general is wide open.
Yeah, no, and it's gonna be interesting to see. So let's go with our overreactions to week 1. What is your overreaction for the Carolina Panthers?
Cam Newton of last year is the Cam Newton of this year.
Wow, that's not good for Carolina.
No, it's not. And obviously, I expect Cam Newton to be much better this week. He had that one game under his belt to shake the rust off. But if you are just judging by last week, he did not look very good.
Yeah. What's your overreaction for New Orleans?
I guess my overreaction would be they can't run the football.
Yeah.
2 new running backs added to that rotation there, and Alvin Kamara and Adrian Peterson, and they still can't run the football.
Yeah. And then your overreaction for Atlanta?
The offense of last year is not the same now that Kyle Shanahan is gone.
Yeah, that was my overreaction for Atlanta is what happened to the play calling. Where is it? That was not the same play. That was not the same game. That was not the same game plan that we had all last season. Where to go? What happened to it? I want it back. My overreaction for New Orleans: trade Adrian Peterson. Seriously, Arizona should. What's it called? Dan Patrick mentioned it on his show. That Arizona should have called New Orleans and offered a trade. A 5th-round pick for Adrian Peterson in Arizona, that would have worked perfectly. Or New York. I think he should have gone to the New York Giants all along. That's my overreaction, and I don't think that's necessarily a complete overreaction because they do need to get rid of at least one of those backs, and they're not going to get rid of Mark Ingram or Alvin Kamara. My overreaction for Carolina. My overreaction for Carolina, I guess, is the same as you. If Cam Newton looks as bad as it looked to me I didn't get to see him in person. I was on Twitter. If Cam Newton looked as bad as he did on Twitter and as he did in real life, then the Panthers might have another long season because they need him to get the ball downfield. They can't.
I'll tell you, in my game preview I just wrote about that should be published today, I expect Cam Newton to silence the doubters this weekend. I do expect Cam to have a huge game, probably over 300 passing yards, and then all of a sudden, this overreaction that we both said is not even mentioned. Like I said, he was expected to be rusty. I mean, he only threw 2 passes the entire preseason. He's got some new weapons like Russell Shepard, their slot receiver, who he threw a long touchdown to. Some new weapons. He's got to get his chemistry, his mojo back, but it was not pretty in that first half. Some of those throws Cam missed. He's still got plenty of time to get it together, though.
Yeah, well, that's always good. And what's the most optimist view for each team that you have?
Falcons win big in their first game in their new stadium. Their offense starts clicking, and it's a repeat of the NFC Championship. So that would be extremely optimistic.
Yeah.
Cam Newton of 2 years ago shows up all of a sudden on Sunday, and they're firing away. So that's optimistic. And the Saints, optimistically, is the New England defense from Thursday night shows up again, and somehow the offense manages to squeak one out because we know New Orleans defense is not going to stop that Patriots offense.
Yeah, and then I guess the most optimistic outlook for the Buccaneers would be Jameis Winston looks like an MVP candidate against the Bears. That would be best case scenario for the Bucs this weekend.
Yeah, and Jameis gets well acquainted with his new weapons.
Yeah, you want to see Jameis throwing it deep to Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans, and you want them to kind of split the field and open up the defense. And that's kind of the best. That's probably the most outlook. That's probably the best outlook for Tampa Bay that you can imagine because we haven't seen them yet. So we can't we'll overreact to Tampa Bay on next week's show, but we can't overreact to anything that they've done so far yet. That's all I've got to add. You got anything else to add, Erik? Oh,
fantasy sleepers.
Fantasy sleepers. New Orleans.
You want to start with that Bills-Panthers game?
Yeah, let's start with the Bills-Panthers game. Fantasy sleeper, Jonathan Stewart.
Okay. That's who mine was last week. And by the way, he did score a touchdown.
Yeah, he did score a touchdown, yeah. So I'm going to go Jonathan Stewart. I think he gets the majority of the carries. And I think he rushes for close to 100 yards and maybe a touchdown or two.
I don't know about the 100 yards, but I would totally see the touchdown.
I don't know if they have enough faith in Cam to air it out 30 times. So that's why I feel like they're going to turn around and have Jonathan Stewart kind of take the load off Cam's shoulder and maybe 15 carries for him out of the backfield.
My fantasy sleeper, Russell Shepard, the former Buccaneer. He's their slot wide receiver. I mean, Cam connected on a long touchdown to him last Sunday. Mm-hmm. It looked like they had some good chemistry going. And like I said, he's going to see a lot of targets in the slot. I mean, you expect most of the coverage to be geared towards Kelvin Benjamin, Greg Olsen, even Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. I mean, Devin Funchess is on the other side, but right there in the slot is Russell Shepard, and he's one of the more underrated additions of the offseason.
Yeah, and one thing to also add to those fantasy sleepers, Greg Olsen could be a fantasy sleeper. If Cam has to come out and prove that he can throw again, that's his most comfortable target is Greg Olsen. So look for him to rely on Greg Olsen to kind of get his groove back.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that.
Fantasy sleepers for New Orleans and New England. Man, I mean, I might steal your pick here again. I'm going to go Alvin Kamara again because I just don't think Adrian Peterson's a good fit in New Orleans.
I agree. I mean, he had the most carries last week out of any of those three running backs. I'm going to pick something different. I'll go Austin Hooper, the tight end.
That's a good pick.
I expect him to see some more passes his way. I believe Willie Snead is still suspended. Mm-hmm. Drew Brees is going to have to air it out against this Patriots defense. He's going to have to. And Austin Hooper is one of those – not Austin Hooper, I'm sorry. Kobe Fleener. I've been saying Austin Hooper.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even pick up on that.
Kobe Fleener.
Yeah.
Kobe Fleener is one of those underrated tight ends. He's got some agility. He's one of those quick Stanford tight ends. But I would expect Kobe Fleener to catch a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
And Austin Hooper was my pick for the Atlanta game.
So yeah, coming into the Atlanta game. Is he really a sleeper though? After what do you have, like 6 catches for 100 some odd yards in a touchdown?
Yeah, I don't think he's a sleeper, but at the same time, when you have names like Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones,
he can be a sleeper.
You got to pick someone, and so he's kind of that forgotten name out of those big names.
Yeah, I picked Tevin Coleman last week, and he did okay. He didn't do as well as I thought, but none of the running backs did as well as they needed to last week. So this week I'm going to go fantasy sleeper Falcons defense. Look out for them to turn the ball over. Deion Jones can fly. And I also want to see Dontari Poe sack Aaron Rodgers. I want to see Poe get more involved in the defense. Grady Jarrett had some good pressure. Brooks Reed got a sack last week. And then they had the game-winning sack as well. So it's one of those things where the defense kind of picked up some of its mojo back in that last series, even though they got torched all the way down the field. So I'm going to go fantasy sleeper Falcons defense.
And like I said, I'm going
Austin Hooper. That is all risk, no reward. Or all risk, big reward for a fantasy sleeper because they could easily get torched for 35 points and be a negative fantasy defense for you.
They could. They could. Last game, what about that Tampa Bay game with Chicago?
Fantasy sleeper, I'm going to go man. Who's the starting running back for Tampa Bay? It's Sims, right? Because
Jacquizz Rodgers.
Jacquizz Rodgers. Okay, never mind.
Well, come on, that's my fantasy sleeper for this
Oh
game.
no, I'm not going with Jacquizz Rodgers. He's been a Falcon. I know what he can and can't do. And he can't carry an offense as a starting running back. Man, I'm gonna let you pick first. So you're picking Jacquizz. Why are you
I'm picking Jacquizz Rodgers. I think Jacquizz Rodgers, I'm not going to say he's going to have over 100 yards, but I expect him to get 60 yards rushing, maybe catch 1 or 2 passes, and throw a touchdown in there somewhere. Not throw a touchdown, but either catch or run for a touchdown in there too. So I would take Jacquizz Rodgers. He's got a low salary, relatively low in daily fantasy. I know I took him in my DraftKings lineup this weekend.
Huh. Okay. Man, I'm stuck. I mean, Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans aren't sleepers.
No.
OJ Howard. I'm going to take the tight end. I'm going to take the rookie tight end, OJ Howard. If Chicago can manage to defend Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson as well as they did Mohamed Sanu and Julio Jones, they failed to cover Austin Hooper. So watch for a more athletic tight end than Austin Hooper like OJ Howard to find himself in space.
Is he healthy, OJ Howard?
I have not looked. You caught me off guard here. I'm not sure is he healthy or is he playing or not.
I haven't heard anything recently, but I thought I saw a questionable mark next to him.
If he's not healthy, then I'm taking Calvin Brate. I mean, I'm taking whoever the Tampa Bay tight end is because that Bears defense has its hands full.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would expect either one of them or both to have a pretty big game because Chicago seemed like they couldn't cover a tight end last weekend.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things where if you spread out a defense, this is why they got Deshaun Jackson, because if you spread out a defense on both ends, that opens up the middle, and that's where the tight end succeeds.
Yep, and it's also where Jacquizz Rodgers will succeed on Sunday.
We'll see.
I'm sticking with that pick. I'm sticking with that.
No, I'm hoping for you because I know you got him in your Daly's fantasy league, so if he goes off, that could be a big payout for you. But yeah, that's all we got today. You got anything else to add?
No, that's just about it. Some great games this weekend, especially that Sunday night game. It'll be another good weekend of NFL football and college football too, for that record. But
yeah, your Ole Miss Rebels kind of gave you a scare there last week against Tennessee.
In the first half, yeah, they did.
Yeah, man, my brother went to Ole Miss, so I was giving him some heat for it. It was pretty good, but I'm glad that they pulled it out because you don't want to see Ole Miss lose to Tennessee Martin. That just doesn't help the SEC.
And then Shea Patterson ends up setting the school record for most passing yards in a game.
Yeah, so there you go. All good all around. And my dogs pulled it out in South Bend against Notre Dame, so that was always a good win. This week we've got a cupcake, so I'm not too worried about this weekend. But all right, let's wrap it up. This is the Dirty South Show. You've been listening with Hank and Erik. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Sounds good.